There's a lot of nice parallels in the show Arcane. Act 1 of the first season ended with Vi walking away from Powder, who, feeling she needed Vi, broke into tears. And then towards the end of Act 1 in the second season, we see Caitlyn walking away from Vi, who, feeling she needs her, breaks into tears. It's a very nice parallel with some obvious differences. Vi didn't intend to completely leave Powder. She had hit her, was appalled with her own actions, and effectively took a time out, I think, only to then find herself prevented from returning to Powder. And Powder then also met Silco, where here, Caitlyn leaves, I think, with no intention to come back, does a hard pivot into extremist general, whilst Vi finds no one. She is left utterly alone in a dark hole in the ground. Vi this season breaks my heart. I've made videos on episode 1 and 2 of the new season so far, and now to episode 3 I wanted to talk a bit more generally about Vi and her psychology and what's going on. So first we need to take a step back and see Vi's journey across the show so far. The common opinion seems to be that Vi doesn't really change in season 1, except maybe until the end, but I personally disagree. I think we see her change quite early on. To begin with, Vi is brash, angry, and full of passion to make a difference. People down below have to live off scraps where the topsiders have it great. Hence, she takes risks trying to rob from them, and then when there's backlash for that, she talks about revolution, criticises Vander's lack of fire. Does Vi want to shoot missiles at the Piltover councillors? No, probably not, but she does want to fight for her freedom and that of the people she cares about. Then Vander explains it's not as straightforward as that. He tells her all wars come at a cost. Vi already knows this, she lost her parents, but that was a loss that I think fueled her motivation. It gave her an anger and a drive to try and avenge them, but Vi then experiences new loss. Vander and Milo and Clagger, and then kind of Powder. This time they aren't losses that fuel her motivation so much as stunt it. It rams home Vander's point with horrifying force. If you pick fights, you might risk losing the ones you love. This is a huge event that does change Vi, so how does she change after the time jump? Well, 2 points. Firstly, she's kinda horrified by the idea of war now. She doesn't want it. The Vi we see is now working towards peace. She's not afraid to fight, however she fights in order to try and prevent wider conflict. That's her main aim. She also wants to fight pretty much exclusively on her own, clench up her fists and just singularly punch her way through to victory. I'll go to Silco on my own, I'll sock him, and that'll stop anyone else from ever getting caught in the crossfire. That is point 1, but we can also split that into an A and a B for extra unnecessary confusion, because A, this change means Vi now sees peace as the priority over freedom, and B, Vi wants to involve as few other people as possible. She does at points accept the help of Caitlyn and to an extent Echo, but also still she mostly wants to do things alone, where previously she was happy to go with Milo and Clagger and to talk of all of the lanes rising up. She did want Powder to stay back then, yes, but Powder was a very young child. I think that's understandable. I don't think it means this is a Vi entirely wishing to do things alone. Is this point entirely true? I mean, she does attempt to give herself up to the Enforcers to prevent wider conflict. That is true. Some of this change in Vi does happen before the events at the end of Act 1, but to an extent I still think this is a true point. The second point is that Vi becomes way more protective and way more idealistic towards her sister. And that makes sense, right? Everyone else Vi cares about dies. Vi also somewhat accidentally abandons her sister to the clutches of Silco. And then Vi is shut in prison for ages, and it's awful. Genuinely awful. How do you survive? For Vi, she sustains herself on the hope of Powder, the hope to be with her again. So of course that becomes idealised, especially when Vi blames herself for what did happen, for calling her a jinx and for leaving her to Silco. Vi would doubly want to envision returning to how she and Powder used to be before that moment. Because if returning to that is possible, it would erase Vi's guilt. It would no longer matter what she got wrong. They can pick up where they left off before she got things wrong. So Vi then gets out of prison, and she is still all about finding and looking after Powder. Yes, she was like that before. That's not changed, it's the nature of that motivation that's changed. Because Act 1 Vi wasn't just a protector towards Powder, she was a mentor and a voice of encouragement. She wanted Powder to grow and to develop and to learn new things. Sure, she felt Powder was currently too young for the Vander rescue mission, but Vi wasn't always going to see her that way. Act 2 Vi, however, is an all-out protector who doesn't want Powder to change and doesn't want her to have changed already, especially when a lot of what has changed appears negative to Vi and when they are the result of Vi abandoning her to Silco. That's an extra sense of guilt, which again Vi wants to erase by going back in time, erase all of the change, which may seem quite small, but if you combine all of this together, what we've essentially got is a woman who had a very outwards look on the world, looking ahead, looking forwards, eager for change, then becoming someone who I think you could say is afraid of change, wants to preserve things, keep things as they are. Put more simply, she's gone from someone who was a leader and sought to lead people with a vision and a direction and a look to the future and where they're going, now into someone who's looking to the past and just wanting people back.
Everyone in my life has changed. Promise me you won't change.
On the surface, that doesn't appear to affect much about her actions and her decisions, but deep down it's a big difference to Vi. It's why things go so wrong when they are reunited, because, you know, Jinx has changed. Vi might want to still see her as the young Powder, but she's grown and she's changed, and Vi's insistence to try and see her as Powder feels like Vi actually refusing to accept her sister as she is now, to love Jinx, to love the person she's grown into.
I thought maybe you could love me like you used to, even though I'm different.
Vi is unable to do that, so Jinx picks the nuclear option, and that's where season 1 ends. Where are we now?
Someone who will not pale when faced with Zorn's degeneracy, whose conviction never wavers. A pillar of your community, of course. I could only be referring to
World Anvil! Oh, you better believe it's World Anvil. They are sponsoring this video, they are offering you 51% off, and they are an online tool for building worlds, you may have guessed. But also creating characters, designing and managing campaigns for all sorts of different games. My best friend uses it for D&D, but there's lots of other games. You can use it for planning your stories, writing your stories, working on all sorts of creative projects. For me, it is my novel. I need a tool like this, otherwise I am far too chaotic. We're moving flat soon, and I literally have 6 cardboard boxes full of random sheets of A4 paper I've written old ideas on. Pre-World Anviled me was a nightmare. So with something like this, not only can I keep everything organised, keep it all in one place, be able to easily edit things, but I can create timelines, I can create hyperlinks branching off specific characters or articles, or a billion other things that just make it so much easier to find stuff. Planning things can be hard, especially when there's so much to do, but having all of these tools to help visualise it, to help split everything down into specific points, articles one at a time, it helps immensely. I'm not going to show you because it's a secret, but I've created different bio pages for all of the characters in my world, even the minor ones, which house they live in, what their job is, who they're friends with, who they hate, what different beliefs they have or opinions about events that go on in a book, or whatever. So, World Anvil is great. I hope you can hear my passion, and if you desire, if you crave. If you call to the heavens for a 51% discount, then use the code TREE, or click the link in the description, or the pinned comment, or if you just want to try out the free version, then go for that. You know, there's no time limit on it. Test it out for as long as you want. World Anvil. It's hard to express just how devastating this is for Vi. She's not just seeing her sister as Powder in order to preserve that old idealised image of Powder, but it's also because she's horrified by Jinx. Seeing Jinx shoot people, fire missiles. Like the fear Vi has briefly thinking Jinx has beheaded Caitlyn here and put her head on a platter, that says everything. She is terrified by the idea of Jinx, and it's then a very extreme black and white split, I think, in her mind. If you're familiar with my channel, you know I talk about splitting a lot. Projecting things into clear black and white categories. Powder is the all good, where Jinx is the all bad. It's not some messy person in between who is a mix of both. And if that's how you view it, then the only way Jinx could be saved is by bringing her back into being Powder again. That's the way Vi sees it, it's one or the other. So when Jinx then can't be brought back, when Vi fails in that attempt, when she sees Jinx fire this bomb, it's like Powder has died. It's like the one person, the only thing that's kept Vi going all of those years throughout prison, her only hope in all of the world, it's like watching that die.
Done pretending you're my sister, you're not. You killed her.
And you know, Part of the problem here is the way Vi has been viewing Jinx, that's true, but it doesn't make the feelings any less devastating for her. So where does it leave her? Well, now Vi is driven by an even bigger guilt, I think. Jinx killed a load of people, including Caitlyn's mum. Vi partly feels that's her own fault, because she stopped Caitlyn from shooting Jinx, she disagreed with everyone who told her Powder was gone, she insisted Jinx could be turned back from Powder, and because of that, Jinx was given the chance to cause mayhem. So Vi feels that's her fault, and our first sight of Vi this season is walking through this grey crowd, trying to reach Caitlyn but being afraid to. Will Caitlyn be angry? Her father is certainly angry. Vi is full of apology. It's a huge guilt, and also not just about the explosion of the bomb, but the feeling that Powder has died, the feeling that that's also Vi's fault. I helped kill Powder and create Jinx. And the second motivation I think is curiously similar to season 1 but twisted somewhat, and it's this line that's the giveaway.
I'm done blaming myself for your mistakes. Done pretending you're my sister. You're not. You killed her. I'm not gonna let you stain her memory anymore.
Things get a bit contradictory here, as all the deepest human emotions are. On the one hand, Vi is burning up in her own guilt, and on the other hand, she's blaming Jinx for all of it. That seems a bit odd. Well, no, it's very ordinary. This is a huge amount of guilt now that Vi has been putting all onto her own shoulders. Whether justified or not, that's what she's been doing. I am the big responsible sister. Powder is the little idealised innocent, so it must all be my fault. It's all my responsibility. But when the guilt becomes too overwhelming now, too extreme, you may very well start projecting it outwards. And also we've got the splitting at work now. Previously Vi was refusing to see Jinx as anything other than Powder, but that's impossible now. She feels Powder has died. But at the same time, Vi can't just let go of Powder. The hope of Powder was her defense. It's what has held her together, kept her going through all of those years in prison. And faced with a new, very different world to the one that was before she left prison, the hope of Powder is her anchor, to preserve that idealized goodness in an otherwise bleak world. Just because she might literally feel Powder is dead doesn't mean she can let go of that image. Hence you get that quote, this awful, tragic feeling she has to kill Jinx in order to preserve the memory of Powder. She is fighting for the memory now, an idealised past innocence that has long fled. And from that position, not only is it much easier to blame and project onto Jinx, but Vi may actively want to do that because Jinx does threaten this idealised memory. Jinx is still her sister, looks like a sister, sounds like a sister, is both Powder and Jinx, but if you want to split the two into very distinct categories in your mind, stop them from merging into one, then yes, you might want to get rid of Jinx, to blame Jinx, to make that the evil monster. Rather than the season 1 hope of being able to pull her sister out of Jinx back into Powder, season 2 is an idea of killing Jinx in order to preserve the memory of Powder, which is heartbreaking. God, it hurts. I think seeing this from the angle of grief is important. It is a kind of killing the living in order to preserve a dead that you have not yet been able to let go of. I say dead, we'll come back to that later. But it's not that simple really, is it? I mean, this vision Vi has in her head of Powder isn't exactly truthful, and some of Powder is definitely still there in Jinx. That is still her sister. She has done incredibly bad things, but she's not an all-out evil. And secondly, Vi does still feel all of this guilt, whether she projects it or not. It is all still there on her shoulders. Combine that with the fact everyone else wants to kill Jinx and thinks she needs stopping in order to achieve peace in Piltover, and what it all means is a very twisted, almost numbed, passive Vi at the start of season 2. And to explain, we're going to talk about Caitlyn. Okay, a good question to ask first is, does Vi really want to kill Jinx? She looks like she's going to, but Isha here intervenes, and Isha, who looks like a very young Powder, even if it's not Powder, is kind of symbolic to Vi of what she was fighting for, this idealised innocence. That is it. The idea of any possible harm coming to that is too much, so she stops and she prevents Caitlyn from shooting. But even had Isha not intervened, does Vi want to kill Jinx? I think it's an internal conflict, but I think the answer is mostly no. I don't think she wants that so much as she feels it has to happen.
It has to end.
Partly out of fear that war will come otherwise, and partly out of guilt for those already dead, and partly out of this desperate wish to preserve that past memory, but that's just it. Vi doesn't really want to. I very much doubt she would have gone through with killing Jinx. She may not have stopped Caitlyn from doing it, but I don't think she would have done it herself, because A, deep down she does still blame herself, not Jinx. B, because I think she knows she can't just preserve some past image, past memory. That's kind of denial. That's kind of being stuck in the grieving process rather than accepting the reality and moving forwards. And C, because as much as it does make things simpler to just see Jinx as some other monster, that is still her sister. Vi does still know that. Nonetheless, before this critical moment where Isha pushes Vi to a breaking point, before then, Vi has buried all of this. She has let Caitlyn lead the way in everything. Vi is initially very much in charge, and Vi is having a bit of fun winding Caitlyn up. She leads where they go, she is in her element and confidence. And then they meet Jinx, and it changes things. After that, Vi becomes more vulnerable and open with Caitlyn. They start to become equals much more, and romance begins to blossom, but this season the balance between them has shifted again. Vi, I think, now feels a little lower down. Topside is obviously Caitlyn's element, and she's also grown in political influence, and this is where the guilt is important again, because Vi doesn't want to put on a badge, regardless of what Maddie tells her and how touching it is. Vi doesn't want to join the Enforcers because she knows Enforcers killed her parents. However, she respects Caitlyn. She cares for Caitlyn in a world where the only other person she cared for feels gone. And she feels guilty for Cassandra's death, so Vi wants to support Caitlyn. Regardless of her personal feelings on the matter, she does put on the badge. She agrees to join a whole team of Enforcers when we know she previously sought to do things on her own, and actually still wants to do things on her own. Twice she suggests it.
I can do this myself. No one else needs to get hurt.
But both times she follows Caitlyn's word. I have no doubt she's uncomfortable about releasing the grey on the citizens as well. We get the wonderful scene from Jinx's perspective to see how horrific and scary and awful this is, but she does all of it and follows Caitlyn, tries her best to support her, tries her best to bring an end to all of this conflict, and yet, is any of this actually what she wants? No. Vi does seem very passive and kind of sleepy in Act 1 of Season 2. All of her fire is gone, not just because she's broken by everything, but because she's in conflict with the actions she is now taking. But what does Vi actually want? At this point, she doesn't yet know. She needs to find out. Vi is almost certainly going to be at rock bottom from episode 4. The harder she tried to punch her way to success, the less she knew what success even meant. She'll still have the guilt and the fear, but may now also feel powerless. And I think actually find herself in a position where she will start to understand Jinx. Not necessarily agree with Jinx, but certainly understand and empathise with a person who previously horrified her. If I was to suggest what Vi needs, it's to let go of Powder. The Powder she once knew is gone, in the manner of speaking, is dead. But I think, paradoxically, if you can accept that, you would discover instead that she is still living. Powder is still there, but within Jinx. Within this messy, complicated, morally grey person. But I don't think Vi can see that until she really lets go. I don't know exactly how that will look, or what will happen around it, but it feels like an important beat to her arc. And it feels like those 2 points would happen together, letting go of this idealised image of Powder, and at the same time learning to empathise and understand Jinx. What if she isn't some monster to project all bad parts onto? What if Jinx is human, a complicated and confusing one, but a human nonetheless? And that is why this parallel is so meaningful. Both because it's returning to a past experience, one that Vi has been stuck running over in her mind constantly, but now from a different position, one that may enable her to let go, and secondly, because the parallel may symbolically represent Vi beginning to understand her sister. In terms of narrative structure, that seems to be where this is going in my opinion. If so, it will no doubt be written with incredible pain and difficulty for Vi to make that change. This isn't the ideal environment for personal growth and healing. However, Vi has lost absolutely everyone now. Independent of supporting Caitlyn or rescuing Powder, perhaps it is time for Vi to figure out how to fight for herself and for what she wants again. I don't know. Look, I love making big, in-depth psychological analyses about characters, but I can't do that this video. This one's more generalised thoughts because they're releasing 3 episodes of this show a week. That means making 3 videos a week if I want to keep up, which I do, but it means these videos have to be shorter. This was just what I decided
to talk about when I woke up this morning. I hope you enjoyed this, and I am super excited to see what happens next with Vi and everyone else. So comment your thoughts, good or bad. Like this video if you like it, subscribe, maybe support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee if you fancy, but otherwise, hopefully see you next time. And as ever, a special thank you goes to Flying Spider, Grace, Kellyanne Davidson, Luke Hoare, Michael Gallagher, Chad Bramwell and Joshua C. Follier. Thank you.